Sometimes the most honest words slip out when we least expect them. In a world where everyone pretends to have it all figured out, where social media feeds overflow with perfect moments and practice poses, there's something breathtaking about raw honesty. It cuts through the noise like lightning through a storm, leaving everything changed in its wake. What happens when a 23-year-old woman, standing in the middle of nowhere, Montana, admits her deepest secret to a stranger? What happens when that stranger turns out to be everything she never knew she was looking for? Some stories begin with grand gestures and sweeping declarations. This one begins with a whisper, a blush, and the kind of courage it takes to admit you don't know what everyone else seems to have mastered. In a small town where everyone knows everyone else's business, where gossip travels faster than wildfire, Emma Richardson kept one secret locked away so tightly that even she sometimes forgot it existed. Until the day she met Jake Morrison, and, suddenly, keeping secrets became impossible. This is the story of how sometimes the scariest thing you can do is tell the truth, and how sometimes that truth changes everything. Emma Richardson pressed her back against the wooden fence post, watching the dust settle from the departing pickup truck that had just dropped her off in what felt like the middle of absolutely nowhere. Her phone showed no signal bars, and the GPS had given up trying to locate her position about 20 minutes ago. The gravel road stretched endlessly in both directions, bordered by rolling hills covered in golden grass that swayed in the afternoon breeze. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, even though the Montana sun was warm against her face. The silence was overwhelming after living in Seattle for the past 5 years. No traffic sounds, no construction noise, no crowds of people rushing past on busy sidewalks. Just the whisper of wind through grass and the distant sound of cattle somewhere beyond the hills. Her rental car had broken down 2 hours ago, smoke billowing from under the hood like a distress signal. The tow truck driver who eventually showed up was heading back to town and offered her a ride to the nearest ranch, promising someone there could help her figure out transportation. What he hadn't mentioned was that the nearest ranch was still 15 miles from the nearest town, and that someone was apparently not currently home. Emma checked her phone again, hoping for even one bar of service. Nothing. She was supposed to be at her college roommate Sarah's wedding rehearsal dinner in Billings tomorrow evening, and right now that felt about as achievable as flying to the moon. Her carefully planned road trip from Seattle was turning into a disaster, and she was stranded on a ranch that looked like something from an old Western movie. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up from her phone. A horse and rider were approaching from the direction of the ranch house, moving at an easy lope across the pasture. As they got closer, Emma could make out a tall figure in a worn cowboy hat, sitting in the saddle like he was born there. The horse was a beautiful chestnut with a white blaze down its face, and both horse and rider moved with the kind of natural grace that made it look effortless. The rider pulled up near the fence where Emma stood, and she found herself looking up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. They belonged to a man who looked to be in his early 30s, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the edges beneath his hat. He had the kind of face that belonged in old photographs, strong and honest, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "You must be the stranded traveler Pete mentioned," he said, his voice carrying a slight drawl that sent an unexpected flutter through Emma's stomach. "I'm Jake Morrison. This is my family's ranch." "Emma Richardson," she replied, tucking a strand of her brown hair behind her ear. "I'm really sorry to bother you. My car broke down, and the tow truck driver said someone here might be able to help me figure out how to get to Billings." Jake swung down from his horse with easy grace, keeping the reins in one hand. Up close, Emma could see he was even taller than she had first thought, probably 6'2" or more, with broad shoulders that filled out his blue work shirt. There was something steady and reassuring about his presence that made her feel less panicked about her situation. "Billings is about 3 hours from here on a good day," Jake said, pushing his hat back slightly. "What's got you heading that way?" "My college roommate's wedding," Emma explained. "I was driving from Seattle, trying to make it into a little road trip adventure. So far the adventure part is definitely winning over the getting there part." Jake smiled, and those laugh lines around his eyes deepened. "Car trouble has a way of turning road trips into stories you tell for years." "What kind of car are we talking about?" "A rental. Some kind of compact thing that the rental company swore would be perfect for a long drive. It started making weird noises yesterday, and today it just gave up completely. There was smoke and everything. Sounds like it might be the radiator, Jake said thoughtfully. We've got a mechanic in town who's pretty good with most anything that rolls. Problem is, today's Friday, and he's not back until Monday morning. Most folks around here don't work weekends unless it's an emergency. Emma's heart sank. Monday? But the wedding is tomorrow night. When do you need to be there? Well, the rehearsal dinner is tomorrow evening, and the wedding is Saturday night. I'm supposed to be in the wedding party. Emma could hear the panic creeping into her voice. Sarah is going to kill me if I miss this. We've been planning it for over a year. Jake was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Tell you what, he said finally. Let me make some calls. Maybe we can figure something out. In the meantime, you look like you could use something cold to drink and a place to sit down that isn't a fence post. Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. That would be amazing. I was starting to picture myself camping out here overnight. Well, we wouldn't let that happen, Jake said with another smile. Come on, let's get you up to the house. He led his horse over to a gate in the fence, opening it easily and gesturing for Emma to walk through. The ranch house was a sprawling single-story building with a wraparound porch, painted white with green shutters. It looked like the kind of place where families had been living for generations, with flower boxes under the windows and a porch swing that had probably seen countless summer evenings. Have a seat wherever you're comfortable, Jake said, nodding toward the porch chairs. I'll just put Ranger here away and grab us some drinks. Iced tea sound good. Perfect, Emma said, settling into one of the wooden chairs. The view from the porch was spectacular, rolling hills stretching to the horizon in every direction. She could see why people fell in love with country like this, even if it was a little too isolated for her taste. Jake disappeared around the side of the house with his horse, and Emma could hear him talking to the animal in low, gentle tones. There was something soothing about the sound, mixed with the creaking of saddle leather and the soft nickering of the horse. It was like stepping into a different world, one where things moved at a slower pace, and people took time to actually talk to each other. A few minutes later, Jake appeared through the front door carrying 2 tall glasses of iced tea garnished with fresh mint. He handed one to Emma and settled into the chair next to hers, his long legs stretched out comfortably. So Seattle, he said, taking a sip of his tea. That's a long way from here. What takes you way out there? Work, mainly, Emma said. I'm a graphic designer for a marketing company. Been there since college, pretty much. It's a good job, lots of interesting projects. You like the city life? Emma considered the question. I thought I did. Lately, though, I've been wondering if maybe I just got used to it. Sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions, you know? Same routine every day, same coffee shop, same route to work. It's efficient, but not very exciting. What kind of exciting are you looking for? The question caught Emma off guard. She wasn't used to people asking her what she actually wanted, as opposed to what she was doing or planning to do. I don't know, she admitted. I guess I always thought I'd figure that out as I went along. But I'm 23, and I still feel like I'm waiting for my life to actually start. Jake nodded thoughtfully. 23's pretty young to have everything figured out. Most folks spend their whole lives trying to figure out what makes them happy. What about you? Emma asked. Have you always known you wanted to be a rancher? Born into it, Jake said with a grin. 4th generation Morrison on this land. But that doesn't mean it was automatic. I went to college, studied business, thought maybe I'd try the corporate world for a while. Lasted about 6 months in Denver before I realized this place was calling me home. Do you ever regret it? Choosing this over the city? Jake looked out over the rolling pastures, his expression thoughtful. Can't say I do. There's something to be said for knowing your neighbors, for working with your hands, for being able to see the results of what you do. When I fix a fence, it stays fixed. When I take care of the cattle, they're healthy and strong. There's a satisfaction in that kind of work that I never found sitting behind a desk. Emma followed his gaze across the landscape. It's beautiful out here. Peaceful. It can be. It can also be isolating, especially in the winter. Months go by sometimes when the only people I see regularly are my family and the folks in town. Dating isn't exactly easy when the nearest single woman is 50 miles away. The comment hung in the air between them, and Emma felt her cheeks warm slightly. She took a sip of her tea, trying to think of something to say that wouldn't sound awkward. I suppose that makes things complicated, she said finally. A little, Jake admitted. Though I've never been one to rush into things anyway. Figure when the right person comes along, distance won't matter much. Emma found herself studying Jake's profile as he looked out over the ranch. There was something appealing about his quiet confidence, the way he seemed so comfortable in his own skin. It was different from the men she usually met in Seattle, who always seemed to be trying to impress someone or prove something. Can I ask you something? Jake said, turning back to face her. Sure. What's got you so worried about missing this wedding? I mean, beyond the obvious friendship stuff. Emma set her glass down, surprised by the question. What do you mean? You just seem really anxious about it. Like there's more to it than just not wanting to let your friend down. Emma was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share with this stranger who was being so kind to her. There was something about Jake's direct, honest way of asking that made her want to be equally honest in return. Sarah was my roommate all through college, she said slowly. She was always the one who had everything figured out. Always dating someone, always confident, always knew exactly what she wanted. I guess I always felt like I was trying to keep up with her. And now she's getting married. And now she's getting married to this amazing guy she met 2 years ago. And they're buying a house together. And she's got this whole life plan mapped out. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Jake nodded. Sounds like you're being pretty hard on yourself. Maybe, Emma admitted. It's just that everyone else seems to have things I don't even understand. Like they got some handbook on how to be an adult, and I missed the distribution day. What kind of things? Emma felt her cheeks flush again. This was definitely getting into territory she didn't usually discuss with anyone, let alone a complete stranger. But there was something about Jake's easy manner and genuine interest that made her feel safe. Relationships, mainly, she said quietly. Everyone else seems to know how to navigate that whole world. And I just don't. What do you mean? Emma looked down at her hands, twisting them in her lap. She couldn't believe she was about to say this out loud, but something about being stranded in the middle of Montana with this kind, honest cowboy made her want to be honest too. I've never really been in a serious relationship, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I mean, I've gone on dates, but nothing that lasted more than a few weeks. I always seem to mess things up somehow. Jake was quiet, waiting for her to continue if she wanted to. The truth is, Emma said, taking a deep breath, I've never kissed anyone. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. The words hung in the air between them, and Emma immediately regretted saying them. She felt exposed and foolish, like she had just revealed the most embarrassing thing about herself to someone who probably couldn't even imagine being that inexperienced at her age. Jake was quiet for a long moment, but when Emma finally worked up the courage to look at him, his expression wasn't judgmental or surprised. It was thoughtful, maybe even a little tender. That's not something to be ashamed of, he said gently. Easy for you to say, Emma replied, her cheeks burning. You probably think I'm some kind of freak. I think you're honest, Jake said. And I think there's something to be said for not settling for something that doesn't feel right. Emma looked up at him, surprised. What do you mean? I mean, maybe the reason you haven't found the right person yet is because you're looking for something real, something that matters. That's not a bad thing. It feels like a bad thing when everyone else around you seems to have figured it out, and you're still stumbling around in the dark. Jake leaned forward slightly in his chair, his blue eyes serious. Can I tell you something? Emma nodded. Most of those people who look like they have it all figured out, they're just better at pretending than you are. That doesn't make them happier or more successful in the things that actually matter. How can you be so sure? Because I've been around long enough to see how things really work out for people. The ones who rush into things because they think they're supposed to, who settle for good enough because they're afraid of being alone. They're usually not the ones who end up truly happy. Emma considered this. So you think I'm just selective? Jake smiled. I think you're waiting for something worth waiting for. And I think when it happens, it's going to be exactly what you hoped it would be. Even though I have no idea what I'm doing. Especially because you have no idea what you're doing. That means when it's right, you'll know it. You won't have to guess or wonder or try to convince yourself. You'll just know. Emma felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying. You really believe that? I do, Jake said simply. And I think you should too. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sipping their tea and watching the afternoon shadows grow longer across the pasture. Emma felt more relaxed than she had in months, maybe years. There was something about Jake's presence that made her feel like she could breathe fully for the first time in a long while. "I should probably try to figure out what to do about getting to Billings," she said eventually, though she found herself reluctant to break the spell of the afternoon. "Let me make those calls I mentioned," Jake said, standing up. "But Emma?" "Yeah. Don't be in such a hurry to get somewhere else that you miss what's right in front of you." Emma watched him walk into the house, wondering if he was talking about her travel situation or something else entirely. Either way, she found herself hoping the phone calls would take a while to make. Jake was gone for nearly 30 minutes, and Emma could hear his voice drifting through the open windows as he made call after call. She used the time to explore the porch, admiring the view and trying to process the conversation they had just had. She couldn't believe she had told him about never being kissed. It wasn't something she shared with anyone, not even her closest friends. When Jake finally emerged from the house, his expression was thoughtful but not discouraging. "Good news and bad news," he said, settling back into his chair. "The good news is I found someone who can look at your car tomorrow morning instead of Monday. The bad news is he's pretty sure it's going to need parts that won't be available until next week at the earliest." Emma's heart sank. "So I'm definitely going to miss the wedding." "Not necessarily," Jake said. "I've got another idea, but you might think it's crazy." "At this point, I'm open to crazy." Jake grinned. "What if I drive you to Billings? I've got a pickup truck that's reliable, and 3 hours isn't that bad of a drive. We could leave early tomorrow morning, get you to your rehearsal dinner with time to spare." Emma stared at him. "You would do that? Drive 6 hours round trip for a complete stranger?" "Well, by tomorrow you won't be a complete stranger," Jake pointed out. "And besides, I don't get to Billings very often. Might be nice to see the city for a day." "I can't ask you to do that," Emma protested. "It's way too much." "You're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference." Emma felt overwhelmed by his kindness. Why would you do something like that for someone you just met? Jake was quiet for a moment, looking out over the pasture. "My grandmother always said that when someone needs help and you're in a position to give it, you don't think about it too hard. You just help." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. Raised me and my brother after our parents died in a car accident when I was 12. She taught us that being a good neighbor isn't just about the people who live next door." Emma felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry about your parents." "It was a long time ago," Jake said simply. "But it taught me early on that life can change pretty quickly, and the connections you make with people matter more than most other things." Emma studied his face, seeing the depth of experience in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Is that why you came back to the ranch? To be close to family?" "Partly. My grandmother's gone now, but my brother Tom and his wife still live here with their kids. It's nice having family around, especially with the little ones. They keep things interesting." "How many kids do they have?" "2. Lucy's 7 and Sam's 5. They're probably going to be excited to meet you. We don't get many visitors out here." Emma smiled. "I'd love to meet them. You'll get your chance. Tom and Kate are coming for dinner tonight, and the kids always come with them. Which reminds me, you're staying for dinner, right? I mean, unless you had other plans for your evening in the middle of nowhere." Emma laughed. "I think my social calendar is pretty open." "Good. Kate's an amazing cook, and she loves having someone new to fuss over." As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of a truck approaching made them both look toward the drive. A dusty blue pickup pulled up near the house, and Emma could see 2 small faces pressed against the passenger window, watching her with obvious curiosity. "That would be them now," Jake said, standing up as the truck doors opened. A tall, lean man who looked enough like Jake to obviously be his brother climbed out of the driver's side, followed by a pretty woman with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. The kids erupted from the back seat like they had been shot from cannons, racing toward the porch. "Uncle Jake," the little girl called. "Who's that lady?" "Lucy, Sam. This is Emma," Jake said as the children bounded up the porch steps. "Emma, meet my niece and nephew." Lucy was a miniature version of her aunt, with Kate's blonde hair and bright green eyes. Sam looked more like the Morrison men, with dark hair and serious blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. "Are you Uncle Jake's girlfriend?" Lucy asked with the directness that only children possess. Lucy, Kate called from the bottom of the porch steps. Remember what we talked about asking personal questions? Emma felt her cheeks warm, but Jake just laughed. Emma's car broke down, so she's spending the evening with us while we figure out how to get her where she needs to go. Tom Morrison climbed the steps and extended his hand to Emma. Tom Morrison, sorry about my daughter's interrogation techniques. She's been asking Jake when he's going to find a girlfriend for about 2 years now. Tom, Jake said in a warning tone. What? It's true. Tom replied with a grin that was identical to his brother's. Nice to meet you, Emma. I'm guessing Jake's already offered to move heaven and earth to solve your transportation problems. Something like that, Emma said, shaking Tom's hand. He's offered to drive me to Billings tomorrow, which is incredibly generous. Kate joined them on the porch, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. You must be Emma. I'm Kate. Jake called and told me we were having company for dinner. I hope you like pot roast. I love pot roast, Emma said, though she couldn't remember the last time she had eaten a home-cooked meal that wasn't something she had made herself in her tiny Seattle apartment. Good. The kids insisted on making dessert when they heard we were having a guest, so I hope you also like chocolate chip cookies that are slightly burned around the edges. Those sound perfect, Emma said, smiling at Lucy and Sam, who were still watching her with fascination. Can Emma sit by me at dinner? Lucy asked. If she wants to, Kate said. But, remember, guests get to choose where they sit. I would love to sit by you, Emma told Lucy, who beamed with satisfaction. The next few hours passed more quickly than Emma had expected. Dinner was served at a long wooden table in the ranch house's dining room, with mismatched chairs and a centerpiece made of wildflowers that Lucy had picked that afternoon. The food was everything Kate had promised and more, the kind of hearty, comfort meal that Emma had grown up with but rarely took time to make for herself anymore. The conversation flowed easily around the table, touching on ranch life, the kids' activities, and Emma's work in Seattle. She found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months, enjoying the easy banter between the family members and the way they included her without making her feel like an outsider. After dinner, while Kate and Tom cleaned up despite Emma's offers to help, Jake suggested they take a walk to see the sunset from the hill behind the house. The kids begged to come along, and soon the 5 of them were making their way up a gentle slope that offered a panoramic view of the valley below. This is my favorite time of day out here, Jake said as they reached the top of the hill. Wait until you see what happens when the sun hits those hills. Emma didn't have to wait long. As the sun began to sink toward the western horizon, the entire landscape was painted in shades of gold and orange and deep purple. The sky seemed to stretch on forever, unmarked by buildings or power lines or any of the clutter of city life. It's incredible, Emma breathed, watching the light change by the minute. Uncle Jake comes up here every night, Lucy informed her, settling cross-legged in the grass. Even when it's cold. Not every night, Jake protested mildly. Almost every night, Sam said, joining his sister on the ground. He says it helps him think. Emma glanced at Jake, who was watching the sunset with an expression of quiet contentment. What do you think about? Different things, Jake said. The ranch, the family, the future. Sometimes I just try to clear my head completely. I don't think I've ever done that, Emma admitted. Just sat somewhere and thought, or not thought. You should try it sometime. It's harder than it sounds, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty peaceful. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared behind the hills, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Emma couldn't remember the last time she had seen so many stars, or when she had felt so relaxed and present in a moment. We should head back, Kate called from the bottom of the hill. These 2 need baths before bed. The kids groaned, but obediently started down the hill, chattering about their day and making plans for the next one. Emma found herself walking beside Jake, matching his easy stride as they made their way back to the house. Thank you for this, she said quietly. For dinner, for the sunset, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I really can't believe how kind you all are being to a complete stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, Jake said. And, besides, you're good company. The kids obviously adore you, which is a pretty good sign. They're wonderful. You're lucky to have family like this. I know I am, Jake agreed. What about you? Do you have siblings? one older sister. She lives in Portland with her husband and 2 kids. We're close, but we don't see each other as much as we should. Miss having family nearby? Emma considered the question. I didn't think I did, but being here tonight makes me realize what I'm missing. There's something special about having people who really know you. Is that what you're looking for? People who know you. The question caught Emma off guard. I guess so. In Seattle, I have friends and coworkers, but sometimes I feel like we're all just skimming the surface with each other. Like we're all trying so hard to have interesting lives that we forget to actually live them. Jake nodded thoughtfully. I can see how city life might feel that way. Everything moving so fast that you don't have time to really connect. Exactly. Although I'm starting to think maybe it's not just about the city. Maybe it's about being willing to be vulnerable with people, to let them see who you really are. Like telling a cowboy you just met that you've never been kissed? Emma felt her cheeks flush in the darkness. I still can't believe I told you that. I'm glad you did. Why? Jake stopped walking for a moment, turning to face her in the dim light coming from the house. Because it takes courage to be that honest. And because it tells me something important about you. What's that? That you're not willing to settle for something that doesn't feel right. That when you do find what you're looking for, it's going to mean something. Emma felt her heart skip a beat at the intensity in his voice. How can you be so sure? Because I know what it's like to wait for something real, Jake said quietly. And I know what it feels like when you find it. The words hung between them in the cooling air, loaded with meaning that Emma wasn't sure she was ready to examine too closely. They were standing close enough that she could see the starlight reflected in his eyes, close enough that she could smell the lingering scent of his cologne mixed with hay and leather. Jake, she said softly, not sure what she wanted to say next. I know, he said, stepping back slightly. I'm sorry if I'm moving too fast. The last thing I want to do is make you uncomfortable. You're not making me uncomfortable, Emma said quickly. It's just, this is all very new for me. Jake smiled, and even in the dim light, she could see the warmth in his expression. Then, let's take it slow. We've got time. They resumed walking toward the house. But Emma's mind was spinning. She had never felt this kind of immediate connection with anyone before, this sense of rightness and possibility. It was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. Tom and Kate were loading the kids into their truck when Jake and Emma reached the yard. Lucy rolled down her window to wave goodbye to Emma, making her promise to come back and visit soon. Those two are going to be talking about you for weeks, Kate said, giving Emma a warm hug. I hope we'll see you again. I hope so too, Emma said, surprised by how much she meant it. After Tom's family left, Jake and Emma settled back on the porch with cups of coffee, neither of them seeming ready to end the evening. I should probably ask where I'm sleeping tonight, Emma said eventually. I don't want to impose, but I'm guessing there aren't any hotels within walking distance. The guest room's all made up, Jake assured her. And there's definitely no walking to a hotel from here. Closest one is in town, and that's 15 miles. Are you sure it's not too much trouble? Emma, if it was too much trouble, I wouldn't have offered. Besides, we're getting an early start tomorrow if we're going to get you to Billings in time for your rehearsal dinner. Emma felt a mix of gratitude and something else she couldn't quite identify. You're really going to drive me all that way. I'm really going to drive you all that way, Jay confirmed. Unless you've changed your mind about wanting to go. Emma thought about Sarah's wedding, about the life she had left back in Seattle, about all the reasons she should be eager to get back to her normal routine. Instead, she found herself wishing she could stay on this porch with Jake for just a little longer. No, she said finally. I haven't changed my mind. But Jake? Yeah. Thank you. For everything. This has been one of the best days I've had in a very long time. Jake reached over and touched her hand gently, just for a moment. It's been a good day for me too, Emma. And I have a feeling tomorrow's going to be even better. As Emma settled into the comfortable guest bed an hour later, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the countryside night, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The thought should have been frightening, but instead it felt like the first truly exciting thing that had happened to her in years. Emma woke to the sound of roosters crowing and sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment she was disoriented. Then, the events of the previous day came flooding back. She was in Montana, at Jake Morrison's ranch, and in a few hours he was going to drive her to Billings for Sarah's wedding. The smell of bacon and coffee drifted through the house, and Emma could hear Jake moving around in the kitchen. She checked her phone and was surprised to see it was only 6:30 in the morning. In Seattle, she rarely got out of bed before 8, but something about the ranch made early morning feel natural. After a quick shower in the guest bathroom, Emma made her way to the kitchen wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Her suitcase was still in her broken-down rental car, which meant she would be attending a wedding rehearsal dinner in jeans and a cardigan unless they could retrieve her luggage. "Morning," Jake said, looking up from the stove where he was tending a pan of scrambled eggs. He was already dressed in clean jeans and a button-down shirt, his hair still damp from his own shower. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months," Emma admitted. "I forgot how quiet the country is at night." "Takes some getting used to if you're from the city," Jake agreed. "Coffee's ready, and breakfast will be done in just a minute. I figured we'd want to get an early start." Emma poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, watching Jake cook. There was something appealing about his easy competence in the kitchen, the way he moved with the same confidence here as he had on horseback. "I was thinking," Jake said as he plated the eggs, "we should swing by and get your suitcase from your car before we head to Billings. Figured you might want to wear something besides jeans to a wedding rehearsal." "That would be perfect," Emma said gratefully. "I was wondering how I was going to explain showing up to Sarah's fancy rehearsal dinner looking like I just rolled off a ranch." Jake grinned. "Well, technically you did just roll off a ranch." They ate breakfast while making plans for the day. Jake had already called the mechanic to arrange for Emma's car to be towed to his shop, and he had packed an overnight bag in case they decided to stay in Billings rather than make the drive back in the dark. "You really thought of everything," Emma said, impressed by his thoroughness. "Learned early that it's better to plan for different possibilities," Jake replied. "Ranch life teaches you that things don't always go according to plan." As they load